My name is Sophia Robinson, and at 32, I thought I understood the boundaries of family loyalty. Growing up as the middle child in a family of 5, I'd learned to navigate the complex web of sibling relationships, but nothing prepared me for what my sister-in-law would eventually do to me. Catherine Diaz had been part of our family for 8 years, ever since she married my older brother Henry. From the moment she walked into our lives, she felt like the sister I'd never had. My actual sister lived across the country, busy with her own family, but Catherine was right here, woven into the fabric of our daily existence. Our family had always been close-knit, perhaps too close for some people's comfort. Sunday dinners at Mom and Dad's house were sacred, holiday traditions were non-negotiable, and we all lived within a 20-minute drive of each other. Catherine embraced this immediately, often arriving early to help Mom cook and staying late to clean up. She remembered everyone's birthdays, organized surprise parties, and somehow managed to make each of us feel like we were her favorite. I was particularly grateful for her presence during the difficult years when our family struggled with Dad's drinking problem. Catherine never judged, never made uncomfortable comments, and was always ready with a listening ear or a shoulder to cry on. When Dad finally got sober 3 years ago, she was there celebrating with us, tears streaming down her face as if his recovery was her own personal victory. The trust between us grew naturally. We shared everything: relationship troubles, work frustrations, family gossip, and dreams for the future. When I started dating Marcus last year, Catherine was the first person I called to tell. She squealed with excitement, demanded every detail, and immediately began planning ways to make our relationship special. "You deserve someone amazing," she'd tell me, squeezing my hand across the dinner table, "and Marcus seems perfect for you." She helped me plan romantic surprises for Marcus, elaborate date nights, thoughtful gifts, even a surprise weekend getaway for his birthday. Catherine had this incredible ability to remember the little things people mentioned in passing, and she'd use those details to create magical moments. She knew Marcus loved vintage vinyl records, so she helped me track down a rare album he'd mentioned wanting. When he was stressed about a work presentation, she suggested I surprise him with his favorite takeout and a handwritten note of encouragement. "Family takes care of family," she'd say, and I believed her completely. But lately, something felt different. Subtle changes that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Catherine's hugs lasted a fraction of a second less. Her laugh seemed forced during family gatherings. When Marcus and I would share stories about our relationship, I caught her exchanging glances with Henry that I couldn't interpret. Last month, during Mom's birthday dinner, I noticed Catherine whispering to Henry in the kitchen. They stopped talking the moment I walked in, both turning to me with bright, artificial smiles. When I asked what they were discussing, Catherine waved her hand dismissively and said they were just talking about work. Then there were the phone calls. Catherine used to call me several times a week, just to chat or make plans. Those calls became less frequent, and when we did talk, the conversations felt stilted, like she was holding something back. When I mentioned this to Henry, he shrugged and said Catherine had been stressed about her job lately. The most unsettling change was how she acted around Marcus. Catherine had always been warm and welcoming to him, including him in family jokes and making sure he felt comfortable at gatherings. But recently, she seemed almost careful around him. Polite, but distant, as if she was measuring every word before speaking. I tried to dismiss these observations as paranoia, telling myself that relationships naturally evolve and that I was reading too much into normal fluctuations in family dynamics. But deep down, something felt wrong. The sister I thought I knew seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone who looked the same but felt like a stranger. Last week, Marcus made an offhand comment that sent a chill down my spine. We were discussing family dynamics, and he mentioned how complicated family histories could affect relationships. The way he said it, with a knowing look in his eyes, made me wonder what exactly he meant by complicated. When I pressed him for details, he quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing stronger every day. Something was happening in my family, something that involved Catherine and Marcus, and I had the sinking feeling that I was the only one who didn't know what it was. The foundation of my relationship with Catherine had been built over 7 years of shared experiences, late-night conversations, and the kind of trust that develops when someone becomes more than family by marriage. They become family by choice. When Henry first brought her home during his senior year of college, I was initially skeptical. My brother had a history of dating women who seemed more interested in his potential than in him as a person. But Catherine was different. She remembered my coffee order after meeting me twice, asked genuine questions about my work in graphic design, and never once made me feel like the annoying little sister who was intruding on their time together. When they got engaged 2 years later, I was genuinely thrilled. When they married, I felt like I was gaining the sister I'd always wanted. Our bond deepened over the years through countless shared moments. Catherine was there when I graduated from college, cheering louder than anyone else in my family. She helped me move into my first apartment, spending an entire weekend painting walls and assembling furniture. When I went through a difficult breakup 3 years ago, she showed up at my door with ice cream and tissues, ready to listen for as long as I needed to talk. Most importantly, Catherine had been instrumental in helping me plan romantic gestures for Marcus. When I wanted to surprise him for his birthday last year, she spent hours helping me coordinate a surprise party, reaching out to his friends and making sure every detail was perfect. She even drove across town to pick up his favorite cake from a bakery that was completely out of our way. For our 6-month anniversary, Catherine helped me plan a weekend getaway to a cabin in the mountains. She researched locations, helped me book the perfect place, and even lent me her camera so I could capture the memories. Marcus was so touched by the thoughtfulness of the surprise that he later told me it was one of the most meaningful gifts he'd ever received. These weren't just casual favors. They were acts of love from someone who genuinely cared about my happiness. Catherine understood how important Marcus was to me, and she went out of her way to help me show him how much I cared. That's what made the recent changes in her behavior so confusing and hurtful. The first real crack in our relationship appeared 3 months ago during a family barbecue at my parents' house. I was telling everyone about a promotion opportunity at work, excited about the possibility of leading my own design team. As I spoke, I noticed Catherine and Marcus exchanging a look that I couldn't quite interpret. It wasn't supportive or encouraging, it was something else entirely. Later that evening, when I was helping Mom clean up in the kitchen, Catherine approached Marcus on the back patio. I could see them through the window, their heads bent together in what appeared to be an intense conversation. When I joined them outside, they immediately separated, and Catherine quickly excused herself to help with the dishes. "What were you two talking about?" I asked Marcus as we drove home that night. He was quiet for a moment before responding, "Just family stuff." Catherine was asking about how I felt being part of such a close-knit family. Something about his answer felt incomplete, but I didn't press the issue. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. The second incident happened during Henry and Catherine's housewarming party for their new home. I had spent weeks helping Catherine plan the event, from choosing decorations to coordinating the catering. Everything was perfect, and I was proud of how well we had worked together to create such a beautiful celebration. But during the party, I noticed Catherine pulling various family members aside for private conversations. She spoke quietly with my cousin Diana, then with my Aunt Helen, and finally with my parents. Each conversation lasted only a few minutes, but they all had the same pattern. Catherine would glance in my direction, speak in hushed tones, and the other person would nod with a concerned expression. When I asked Henry about it later, he seemed genuinely confused. "I didn't notice anything unusual," he said. "Catherine's been stressed about work lately. Maybe she was just catching up with everyone." But I knew Catherine well enough to recognize when she was being deliberately secretive. This wasn't casual conversation. This was something more purposeful. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago during what should have been a routine family dinner. Marcus had been invited, as he often was, and the evening started normally. We were discussing holiday plans when Catherine made a comment that stopped me cold. "It's so important to be honest in relationships," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "Don't you think secrets can be really damaging to trust?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I suppose it depends on the situation," he replied carefully. "I mean, if someone had a family history of challenges, wouldn't their partner deserve to know about that?" Catherine continued, her voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. The room fell silent. My parents exchanged glances, and Henry looked confused. But I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Catherine was talking about my family's history with addiction. Specifically, my father's struggle with alcoholism during my teenage years, and my own brief period of experimentation with substances in college. These weren't secrets I was deliberately hiding from Marcus, but they weren't topics I had felt ready to discuss either. My father had been sober for over a decade, and my own experiences had been brief and were firmly in the past. I had planned to share these parts of my family history with Marcus when our relationship reached a deeper level of commitment, but I wanted to do it on my own terms and in my own time. The way Catherine was speaking made it clear that she had already shared this information with Marcus. The knowing looks, the careful conversations, the recent distance, it all suddenly made sense. After dinner, I confronted Catherine in the kitchen while the others were in the living room. "Did you tell Marcus about Dad's drinking problem?" I asked directly. Catherine's face flushed, but she didn't deny it. "Sophia, I was just trying to help. Marcus asked me about family dynamics, and I thought he should know." "That wasn't your story to tell," I interrupted, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "Those were private family matters that I should have been able to share with him myself when I was ready." "But you weren't sharing them," Catherine shot back. "You've been together for over a year, and he still doesn't know about your family's struggles. Don't you think that's unfair to him?" The audacity of her response left me speechless. This woman, who I had trusted with my deepest secrets, who I had considered a sister, had betrayed my confidence and then had the nerve to justify it as being helpful. "What else did you tell him?" I demanded. Catherine's silence was answer enough. She had shared not just my father's history, but details about my own past that I had confided in her during vulnerable moments. Stories about my brief experimentation with substances in college, my struggles with anxiety, family financial difficulties, intimate details that I had shared because I trusted her completely. As I drove home that night, Marcus finally admitted the truth. Catherine had approached him weeks ago, claiming she was concerned about my honesty in our relationship. She had painted a picture of me as someone who was deliberately hiding significant aspects of my past, suggesting that I couldn't be trusted to be forthcoming about important matters. "She said she was worried about you," Marcus explained, his voice heavy with regret. "She made it sound like you were struggling with things you weren't telling me about, and that maybe I could help if I knew what was going on." The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Catherine hadn't just violated my privacy. She had manipulated the narrative to make herself look like the concerned sister-in-law while painting me as deceptive and untrustworthy. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I realized that the sister I thought I knew had never really existed. The woman who had helped me plan romantic surprises and supported me through difficult times had been keeping score, collecting information, and waiting for the right moment to use it against me. The worst part was that I still didn't understand why. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face pretending everything was normal when my world had been turned upside down. Marcus had left early for a business trip, giving me space to process what had happened, but the silence in our apartment felt suffocating. I needed answers, and I needed someone on my side. My first call was to my younger sister Helen, who lived across town with her husband and 2 kids. Helen had always been the peacekeeper in our family, but she was also fiercely loyal when it mattered. "Sophia, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" Helen's concern was immediate and genuine. I told her everything. About Catherine's betrayal, about the secrets she'd shared with Marcus, about the way she'd twisted the narrative to make me look deceptive. Helen listened without interrupting, her breathing growing heavier as the story unfolded. "That manipulative," Helen caught herself, remembering her kids were in the next room. "Sophia, I'm so sorry, but I have to tell you something. This isn't the first time Catherine has done something like this." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Remember when David and I were having those marriage problems last year? The ones we worked through in counseling?" Helen's voice was tight with anger. "Catherine approached David at Mom's birthday party. She told him she was, quote, about me, that I had been saying things about our marriage that made her worry I wasn't committed to working things out. I felt sick. What kind of things? Things I had never said. She told David the first had been complaining about him to her, that I had mentioned being attracted to someone at work. Complete lies. It almost destroyed us, Sophia. David confronted me about these supposed conversations, and I had no idea what he was talking about. We nearly separated over it." The pattern was becoming clear. Catherine wasn't just a gossip or someone who couldn't keep secrets. She was actively manipulating situations, creating drama and mistrust within our family. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" I asked. because we worked through it, and I thought maybe I had misunderstood what happened. Catherine was so convincing when she denied it, and she seemed so hurt that I would accuse her of lying. She made me feel like I was being paranoid and unfair. That afternoon, Helen came over with coffee and a determination I hadn't seen from her in years. We sat at my kitchen table, and she pulled out her phone. "I've been thinking about this all morning," she said. "If Catherine did this to both of us, she's probably done it to others. We need to find out how deep this goes." We started with our brother Henry, Catherine's husband. Helen called him while I listened on speaker. "Henry, we need to talk to you about Catherine," Helen began carefully. "Has she ever mentioned being concerned about Sophia or me? Maybe suggested that we were keeping things from our partners or having problems we weren't addressing?" The long pause on the other end told us everything we needed to know. "What has she done now?" Henry's voice was tired, resigned in a way that suggested this wasn't his first rodeo with Catherine's behavior. "You know about this?" I couldn't hide my shock. "I've suspected for a while that Catherine has been stirring things up in the family, but I didn't have proof, and every time I tried to address it with her, she would turn it around on me. She'd say I was being controlling or that I didn't trust her to care about our family." Henry agreed to meet us that evening. When he arrived at my apartment, he looked like he hadn't slept. The confident, happy brother I knew had been replaced by someone who seemed worn down by years of managing a situation he couldn't control. "It started small," he explained, sitting heavily on my couch. "Catherine would mention things about family members that seemed off, but when I asked where she heard them, she'd say someone had confided in her. She positioned herself as the family confidant, the one everyone trusted with their secrets. But she was making things up," Helen said. "Not always. Sometimes she would take something real, like Dad's drinking problem, and embellish it or share it inappropriately. Other times she would completely fabricate conversations or situations. The worst part is that she's so good at it. She mixes truth with lies in a way that makes it hard to dispute." Henry told us about other incidents we hadn't known about. How Catherine had told our cousin that I was struggling financially and might need to borrow money, leading to an awkward conversation where our cousin offered help I didn't need. How she had suggested to our aunt that Helen was having postpartum depression after her second child, causing unnecessary worry and unwanted interventions. "She creates problems and then positions herself as the solution," Henry said. "She told your cousin she was worried about you, Sophia, so when he offered help, she looked like the caring sister-in-law who was looking out for you. She told Aunt Margaret she was concerned about Helen, so when Margaret started checking in constantly, Catherine looked like the observant family member who noticed what others missed." The scope of Catherine's manipulation was staggering. She had been systematically undermining relationships within our family for years, all while maintaining her image as the devoted wife and caring sister-in-law. "Why?" I asked. "What does she get out of this?" Henry rubbed his face with his hands. "Control. Attention. She likes being the center of information, the one people come to when they're worried about someone else. And I think she enjoys the drama. She gets bored with normal family dynamics, so she creates chaos." That evening, the three of us developed a plan. We would document everything we could remember about Catherine's behavior, reach out to other family members to see if they had similar experiences, and then confront her together. But first, we needed more evidence. Helen suggested we test Catherine by giving her false information to see if she would spread it. It felt manipulative, but we needed to prove the pattern of behavior. I called Catherine the next day, putting on my best defeated voice. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday," I said. "You were right that I should have been more open with Marcus. Actually, there's something else I've been keeping from him that I'm not sure how to handle." Catherine's interest was immediate. "What is it? You know you can trust me." I fed her a completely fabricated story about considering a job offer in another state that would require Marcus and me to relocate. I made it sound like I was torn between the opportunity and my relationship, and that I hadn't mentioned it to Marcus because I was afraid of how he would react. "Promise me you won't say anything to anyone," I pleaded. "I need to figure out how to handle this myself." Catherine assured me that my secret was safe with her. 2 days later, Helen called me. "David just asked me if you and Marcus are having problems because you're considering moving away for work. He said Catherine mentioned she was worried about you." We had our proof. The confrontation happened the following Sunday at our parents' house during our regular family dinner. Helen, Henry, and I had agreed to address Catherine's behavior together, with our parents present as witnesses. When Catherine walked into the dining room chatting cheerfully about her week, she had no idea what was waiting for her. The conversation started normally, but after dinner, Henry cleared his throat. "Catherine, we need to talk about some concerns we have about information being shared within the family." The change in Catherine's demeanor was immediate. Her smile faltered and her eyes darted between the three of us. "What do you mean?" she asked, but her voice had lost its usual confidence. I spoke first, outlining what she had told Marcus about my family's history and how it had violated my trust. Helen followed with her story about the lies Catherine had told David. Henry added his observations about the pattern of behavior he had witnessed. Catherine's response was exactly what we had expected. She denied everything, claimed we were misunderstanding her intentions, and tried to turn the situation around on us. "I can't believe you're attacking me like this," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "Everything I've done has been out of love and concern for this family. If you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't with me." But this time, we were prepared. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I had made of our conversation about the fake job offer, followed by Helen's account of how that information had been shared with David. The room fell silent. Catherine's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, and finally a cold calculation that I had never seen from her before. "You set me up," she said quietly. "We documented your behavior," Henry corrected. "The same behavior you've been exhibiting for years." Our parents, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally spoke up. Mom's voice was shaky as she addressed Catherine directly. "How long has this been going on? How many family relationships have you interfered with?" Catherine stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this. You're all ganging up on me because you can't handle the truth about your own problems." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, but Henry stood up to follow her. "Catherine, wait. We need to work through this." She turned back, and for a moment, the mask completely slipped. The woman looking at us wasn't the caring sister-in-law I had known for years. She was someone else entirely, someone calculating and cold. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her voice sharp. "This family is full of secrets and problems, and I'm tired of pretending everything is perfect. At least when I share information, people know what they're dealing with." With that, she walked out, leaving the rest of us sitting in stunned silence around the dinner table. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Henry followed Catherine home and demanded a full accounting of her behavior. The conversation lasted hours, and by the end of it, Catherine had admitted to years of manipulation and interference in family relationships.